The storm made the city look like it was underwater. From the glass wall of her penthouse, Vivian Drake watched the rain sheet down the skyscrapers like someone was scrubbing the world clean. Lightning flashed, briefly catching the hard planes of her face, the diamond at her wrist, the exhaustion in the shadows under her eyes. Her reflection stared back at her. 38, CEO of Draken Innovations, top of every list that mattered, and completely, utterly tired. Behind her, the penthouse was a quiet museum of expensive taste and hidden security systems. Minimalist furniture, dark wood, smart glass. No family photos, except one, a small frame on a side table, turned slightly away from the room. On the couch, under a navy blanket, her 7-year-old son Owen lay half asleep, his tablet glowing faintly, dark curls mussed on the cushion. Vivian glanced at him. The only thing in this entire world she'd admit she loved without calculation. Her phone buzzed softly in her hand. For a second, she thought it was another board message, another last-minute crisis, another shareholder fire to put out. It wasn't. Security alert. Interior door unlocked. Vivian blinked. Every door in this place auto-locked. Every hallway watched. Her spine went cold. The alert pulsed again. Service stairwell access override. Her heartbeat stuttered, then accelerated so fast she felt it in her throat. That override code was not in circulation. Not anymore. Vivian straightened, the CEO sliding into her bones like armor. No scream, no panic, just a sharp inhale and the old familiar sensation of pressure narrowing everything down. "Owen," she said quietly. His head moved against the pillow. She crossed the room in 3 strides, crouched beside the couch and brushed his hair back. Lightning flared outside, washing everything white for a second. "Owen, listen to me." Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "Go to your room. Lock your door. Do you remember the code?" He frowned, slow to wake. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing," she lied. "Just a drill. Do exactly what we practiced now." Something in her eyes must have told the truth anyway, because he sat up fast, blanket sliding off his narrow shoulders. He nodded once, serious, and padded away down the hall in his socks. As soon as he disappeared around the corner, the room felt bigger and more fragile. Vivian went to the drawer built into the sideboard and pulled it open. Her hand closed on polished metal. The gun felt both wrong and familiar in her grip. She checked the safety with a practiced flick, hating how automatic it felt, then turned off the main lights with a touchpad on the wall. The penthouse dropped into shadow. Only the storm lit the space now, lightning sketching brief outlines of furniture and glass. She moved toward the corridor leading to the service stairwell, each step placed carefully, quietly. The security cameras showed nothing when she tapped her phone. Static on one, black screen on another. Whoever it was knew exactly which feeds to kill. Her mouth went dry. Her feet didn't stop. At the far end of the corridor, the heavy door to the service stairwell was open an inch, just enough for a slice of darkness to leak through. Impossibly black against the paler interior. She heard it then, faint under the hum of the central air and the distant growl of thunder, a soft footfall. The whisper of fabric against the wall. Someone breathing who did not belong here. Vivian flattened herself against the opposite wall, gun raised. She let her breath out slowly through her nose, steadying her hand. This wasn't a negotiation room, but fear had the same shape, whether it came in tailored suits or black gloves. The door creaked wider. A shadow slid through, low and quick. "Stop there," she said, voice cutting through the dark. The intruder froze. Lightning flashed again, and in that brief white smear, she saw a black mask, a compact figure dressed in dark clothes, gloved hands empty. He wasn't bulky, but he moved with a kind of tensile readiness that reminded her of the private security contractors she hired overseas. Her finger tightened on the trigger. "Hands where I can see them now." He lifted his arms slowly, palms open. "Vivian Drake," he said. His voice was hoarse, distorted, like he'd been running for a long time. "You need to listen to me." "Wrong answer." "You're in my house," she said. "That's the only thing you should be worried about." His gaze ticked briefly past her, toward the hallway that led to Owen's room. That tiny movement almost broke her composure. "You're not safe," he said. "Your company." A hard knock sounded from the front door, loud and fast. 3 beats, pause, 2 beats. The private security signal. For one fractional second, her attention flicked toward the sound. The intruder moved. He lunged sideways, diving behind the marble column that framed the hallway entrance. Vivian fired. The crack of the bullet tore the silence, ricocheted off stone, shattered the framed photo on the console. Glass exploded, raining down sparkling shards. The front door burst open. Sergeant Hayes and 2 men from the private team poured in, weapons drawn, black uniforms absorbing the darkness. "Ms. Drake," Hayes shouted. "Down!" She dropped behind the nearest chaise, grinding glass under her knee, heart battering her ribs. The intruder tried to run for the side exit, and Hayes moved with frightening efficiency, cutting off his angle. One of the guards tackled him, the 3 bodies colliding hard on the polished floor. There was a scuffle, a grunt, the sound of someone being slammed into the base of the staircase. The guards pinned the intruder, twisting his arms behind his back. Hayes kicked something out of his hand, a small metal case that skittered across the floor and split open. Tiny silver chips spilled out. They glowed faintly with embedded micro-etchings, like someone had carved intricate symbols into the surface with a needle. Vivian pushed herself up slowly, gun still raised. Her chest heaved. The air smelled like gunpowder and ozone and fear. She walked toward the man on the floor. His mask had been partially pulled off in the struggle. A pale, unremarkable face, mid-30s maybe, forgettable features, eyes burning with a feverish intensity that made her more nervous than if he'd looked dangerous. He coughed, wet and deep, red touching his lips. One of the guards must have landed harder than intended. "Who sent you?" she asked. Her voice had gone low and flat the way it did in boardrooms when someone thought they could bluff her. He laughed, a rasping sound. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about Arcadia." The name landed like ice in her veins. Hayes glanced at her. He knew that word was not supposed to exist outside a handful of secure files. "What about it?" she demanded. The man's eyes found hers, oddly lucid. "You think you're building a tool?" His breath hitched. "You're building a weapon. They'll use that video. They'll—" He swallowed, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. "I was told to bring a message. That's all." He tried to lift his hand and failed. His fingers twitched toward the scattered chips. "What video?" Vivian asked. Her patience snapped. "Who told you? Who?" His gaze unfocused slightly, as if something far away claimed him. "Too late," he whispered. "They're already inside." His chest rattled. His head lolled sideways. For a terrifying second she thought he was faking. Then she saw the complete absence of tension in his limbs. "Get medics," Hayes barked, already checking the man's pulse. His jaw set. "Now." But Vivian could tell from the look in his eyes that the order was a formality. The message carrier had delivered just enough to be dangerous, and nothing that could save her. Hayes stood, wiping his hand absently on his tactical pants. "We'll sweep the building, lock this floor down. I want every inch of that stairwell checked." Vivian didn't respond. Her attention was on the chips scattered at her feet, tiny, gleaming, and absolutely not supposed to be in anyone else's hands. The engraved logo on one fragment caught the light, a stylized A, Arcadia. Someone had not only broken into her home, they had broken into the future she was building, peeled off a piece of it, and come to drop it at her feet like a curse. She knelt slowly and picked one up between thumb and forefinger, holding it up to the stormlight. Her reflection hovered faint in its polished surface, distorted, as if she were looking at herself through water. They're already inside. Vivian's grip tightened until her fingers hurt. By 9 the next morning, the storm was gone and the city pretended nothing had happened. The boardroom on the 73rd floor of Draken Innovations was a long, lethal piece of architecture. A black stone table, 20 high-backed chairs, floor-to-ceiling glass on 3 sides, the city sprawling beneath them like a conquered map. Vivian stood at the head of the table, shoulders straight, dark hair pulled into a severe knot, wearing the type of suit that silently informed men twice her age that she was not to be underestimated. On the wall-sized screen behind her floated the Arcadia logo, crisp and deceptive. A subtle gradient, a gentle curve, a design meant to suggest innovation and trust. Her right hand, hidden under the table edge, still remembered the weight of last night's gun. Her left thumb traced the corner of the small metal chip, now sealed in a clear evidence envelope tucked into her blazer pocket. "After last night's breach," her COO Sarah was saying, "we've tripled protocol for all Level 3 projects, physical and digital locks. The intruder's dead, but we're treating this as if his employer is very much alive. A low murmur circled the table. For some of them, this was scandal. For Vivian, this was war. A director with immaculate hair cleared his throat. Was Arcadia specifically targeted? Everyone looked at Vivian. She lifted her chin. Yes. No one asked how she knew. No one asked why they were hearing about Arcadia in this room for the first time, when the project had lived until now buried in a sealed lab 3 levels below their feet, accessible only to a handful. They trusted her to keep dangerous things where they belonged. Or they pretended to, because their salaries depended on it. We're still decrypting the fragments he carried, Sarah said. Whoever copied the data knew what they were doing. It's not a straight mirror. It's been sliced, scattered. We don't know how many pieces they have, or what order they're in. Vivian's eyes stayed on the Arcadia logo. Her voice came out steady. Treat it as compromised, she said. And until I say otherwise, Arcadia doesn't leave the lab. Not intellectually, not verbally, not on any network. Anyone who can't live with that can resign. Silence, no one moved. Good, she said. Next item. She went through the rest of the agenda like a machine. Market projections, regulatory headaches, a new partnership proposal. The normal noise of a giant company grinding forward 1 quarter at a time. But underneath it all, one thought kept looping back, circling tighter each time. They're already inside. When the meeting finally adjourned, the room emptied in a wave of cologne and expensive shoes. Sarah lingered, stacking files. You should go home, Sarah said quietly. You look like hell. Vivian pinched the bridge of her nose. Thank you for your usual gentle insight. You were shot at in your own house, Sarah said. If you weren't you, I'd suggest a breakdown. The corner of Vivian's mouth twitched. I don't have time to fall apart. Sarah's gaze softened. What about Owen? That landed harder than any bullet. I've arranged something, Vivian said too quickly. A nanny, full-time. She pulled herself up straighter. He deserves stability, not guards with guns at the door. Sarah smiled faintly. That's as close to an admission of vulnerability as I've seen from you in 5 years. I'm proud. Terrified, but proud. Vivian rolled her eyes, but the truth sat there under her ribs, heavy. Last night, through the hallway chaos and gunfire, all she had seen, all that had truly invaded her, was the image of Owen's small body pressed against his bedroom door, listening. She had built an empire to protect him from ever needing anyone else. All she'd really done was leave him alone at the top of her fortress. When she left the office that afternoon, the sky was a flat pale blue, as if the storm had never existed. Her car slid back through the city toward the gated enclave where her house waited, immaculate and guarded. She knew the nanny's name, Emily Hale, 22, top references, early childhood development classes, clean background check. On paper, she was a solution. Vivian had no idea what she would be in reality. But Vivian opened her front door to a scent of lemons and fresh coffee. The house felt different already, less echo, more life, she realized with grudging surprise. A young woman stood in the foyer, hands clasped around a worn leather bag. She had brown hair pulled into a loose ponytail, a simple blouse, jeans, and a pair of sneakers that had clearly walked more than a few miles. Her eyes were not polished or guarded. They were open, bright, a little nervous. "Miss Drake?" she asked. Vivian took her in one quick assessing sweep. Clothes inexpensive, posture straight. No jewelry except a thin silver ring on a chain around her neck. Not a threat. Not a social climber. Probably. "Yes," Vivian said. "Emily." Emily smiled, relief softening her face. "Thank you for seeing me. I really appreciate the opportunity." Owen peered from behind the railing of the stairs, half hidden. His small hand gripped the banister. Emily noticed him and immediately dropped into a crouch as if the CEO had vanished from the room. "Hey there," she said, voice gentle. "You must be Owen." He nodded, eyes wary. Emily set her bag down and pulled out a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. "I brought you something," she said. "My dad says you can tell a lot about a person by how they handle puzzles. Want to test his theory?" Owen's curiosity flickered, warring with his shyness. He edged down the stairs a little. "What kind of puzzle?" he asked quietly. Emily smiled wider. "The best kind, one you can't solve without a little help." He considered that, then came down the rest of the way and took the box from her hands. The paper crinkled under his fingers. Vivian watched this exchange with a strange feeling in her chest, something between envy and gratitude, and the sharp awareness of a gap she had never been able to fill herself. "Why did your father say that?" Vivian heard herself ask. Emily glanced up at her. "He's a woodworker. He says puzzles are just unfinished stories, and how you react to them shows how you handle the parts of life you can't fix right away." Vivian frowned faintly, not sure she liked the idea of anyone analyzing her son through metaphors, but Owen had already sunk to the floor, tearing open the paper with surprisingly focused intensity. Inside was a simple wooden puzzle, the pieces hand-cut, edges smooth, the grain visible. It wasn't something bought from a designer store. It was made by someone's hands, someone's time. "Did you make this?" Vivian asked. Emily shook her head. "My dad did. He made one for every kid in our old building at some point. He likes seeing them figure things out." "Is this father of yours going to be in and out of my house?" Vivian asked, too sharp. Emily blinked. "No, Mom, he worries. It's just me you're hiring, I promise." Owen fit two pieces together and made a satisfied little sound. Emily's face lit up like someone had turned on a hidden light. Vivian watched the way she looked at him, not as a client's child, as a child, period. She cleared her throat. "We'll start tomorrow, 7 a.m. I leave for the office at 8. He has school, then comes back here. You'll coordinate with my driver." Emily's expression sobered. "Of course, I'll have a schedule ready. And if there's anything specific he doesn't like, foods, bedtime routines, certain noises, I'd like to know. Kids notice everything adults forget." Vivian hesitated, then nodded once. "We can discuss it after dinner." Emily's shoulders eased. "Thank you." As the evening unfolded, Emily stayed mostly in Owen's orbit, learning his rhythms, his quietness, the way he flinched slightly at sudden loud sounds since last night's chaos. She never pressed. She never asked about the sirens he'd heard in the dark. Only once, when Owen had run upstairs to get a toy, did Emily look at Vivian properly, eyes searching. "Are you okay, Miss Drake?" she asked softly. "You look like you've been holding your breath for a long time." Vivian almost laughed. It came out more as a puff of air. "I'm fine," she said. The automatic lie was smooth. She added because something about Emily's gaze made it feel like an insult to say nothing else. "We had a security incident. He heard more than he should have. I'm trying to adjust." Emily's expression turned serious. "He trusts you," she said. "That's more important than you know. Kids build their whole world on that, even if they're scared." Vivian felt those words land where the man's warning from last night had lodged. A different kind of intrusion. Later, when Emily finally left, Owen stood at the window and watched her walk down the driveway to the sidewalk, where a dark pickup truck idled at the curb. A man leaned against it, broad-shouldered, wearing a faded jacket and work boots. The hood of the truck open as if he'd been tinkering with the engine while he waited. The streetlight threw just enough glow to outline his profile when he straightened. He looked up at the house briefly, like he could feel eyes on him. His gaze moved over the windows, the stone facade, the security cameras tucked discreetly under the eaves. He didn't linger. He just gave a small nod when Emily reached him, took her bag from her like it was automatic, and opened the passenger door. They were only silhouettes from this distance, but there was something in the way he moved, economical, grounded, that caught Vivian's attention as she passed behind Owen. "Who's that?" Owen asked, nose pressed to the glass. "Probably her ride," Vivian said. She told herself that was all she needed to know. Across town, in a narrow street 2 blocks from the old industrial district, the man from the truck stepped into a woodshop that smelled like sawdust and oil and coffee. The sign above the door read, "Hale and Daughter Woodworks" in hand-painted letters. Marcus Hale hung his jacket on the same hook he always used, brushed the rain from his hair, and walked to the workbench in the center of the shop. The overhead light hummed on. Tools in carefully ordered rows glinted on the wall. He set Emily's bag on a stool and reached for the small radio on the shelf, clicking it to life. Static, then a news announcer's calm voice. Last night, a suspected intruder died en route to the hospital after a confrontation at the uptown residence of Drake & Innovations CEO, Vivian Drake. Authorities have released no further details. Marcus's hand stilled on the dial. For a moment, the shop felt very small. He turned the volume down almost to nothing and leaned on the workbench, head bowed. "Vivian Drake," So it had started. His gaze shifted to the photo pinned above the bench with a tiny brass nail, a younger version of himself in an old army jacket. A woman at his side with Emily's exact eyes and laugh mid-bloom. A toddler Emily on his shoulders grabbing at his hair. The woman's face was slightly creased from time, the edges of the print worn from being handled too often. Marcus reached up and straightened the photo without really meaning to. Then he picked up the small block of wood he'd been working on the night before, a little train, half-shaped. His fingers closed around it, and the muscles in his jaw tightened. On the radio, the announcer moved on to stock prices, everything sounding normal and distant, as if the world wasn't sliding into a story he'd tried for years to avoid. He set the block of wood down very carefully next to 3 finished puzzles, each with a different pattern, cut into the surface, the type he gave to kids as apologies for the things he couldn't protect them from. He would meet Vivian Drake soon enough. He'd seen her face on magazine covers, screens in shop windows, the corners of news articles he pretended not to read. Tonight, he had only glimpsed her through the glow of a distant window, framed by glass and wealth and fear. He didn't know yet that the next time he looked into her eyes it would be at the edge of a threat neither of them fully understood. He only knew one thing for certain, as the storm clouds began to gather again above the city, and the radio murmured on. He had sent his daughter to work inside the house of a woman at the center of the same world that had already taken everything from him once. And whether he liked it or not, the story was moving toward them. The city was quieter that night, too quiet for Vivian's taste. Quiet always meant someone was planning something. After dinner, after Owen's soft laughter faded upstairs and the dishwasher hummed in its predictable rhythm, the house settled into that brittle calm that made Vivian's nerves tighten. She lingered in her glass-walled study, the city glowing below her like a circuit board. She pretended to read emails, but found herself staring at her reflection instead, the hard outline of a woman trying too hard to appear unbreakable. Her phone buzzed on the desk. Emily, made it home. Owen was great today. Thank you for trusting me. Vivian allowed herself a small, tired smile. She typed back a short response, something polite and professional, but her eyes drifted past the text bubble. Emily hadn't sent a photo, but Vivian could imagine her returning to that little wood shop, her father waiting with the kind of worry that was old and worn into the shape of love. Vivian didn't know what it felt like to have someone wait up for her like that. She shoved the thought aside. She had enough to worry about. The chips from last night were still sealed in the evidence envelope, now locked in her upstairs safe. She could feel their weight even when she didn't touch them. Every hour that passed sharpened the question lodged in her mind. Who was already inside Arcadia? And how far had they reached? A soft clatter sounded from the hallway. Vivian's head snapped up. Not Owen. His footsteps were quick and light. This was slower, heavier, purposeful. Her hand slid toward the drawer in her desk, fingertips brushing the gun she'd placed there earlier. Then a voice drifted down the hall, thin and trembling. Mom? Vivian pushed away from the desk instantly. Owen stood in the doorway to the study, small shoulders hunched, fists curled tight around his pajama shirt. She crossed the room, kneeling to face him. What's wrong? His lower lip quivered. The window in my room, I heard something, like someone tapping. Her blood went cold. The master security feed on her phone showed everything normal, but she already knew that meant nothing tonight. Owen, she said, her voice gentle but firm, go to the guest bathroom, lock the door, I'll come to you when everything is safe. He shook his head violently. Mom, don't leave me. That shattered something deep in her chest. She pulled him tight, holding his trembling body. I won't, I promise, but I need you safe. Go now. He pulled away reluctantly, tears in his eyes, and hurried toward the back of the house. Vivian waited until he was out of sight, then rose slowly, every sense sharpening. Something in the air felt wrong, off balance, unfamiliar. She walked toward the staircase, gun drawn. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice. Went out. Darkness swallowed the house. Vivian did not breathe, not even once. A faint metallic click echoed from the far hallway, the window latch in Owen's room. Vivian spun, heart racing, and moved through the dark with silent, precise steps, trusting the layout she'd memorized after years of living here. Her fingers skimmed the wall until she reached the emergency panel. She pressed her thumb to the pad. The light snapped back on, and Vivian froze. There was a man standing in her upstairs hallway. Not masked, not armed. Just standing there in the middle of her house, dark jacket soaked with rain, eyes locked on her with a mixture of determination and regret. Marcus Hale. No, something inside Vivian whispered. Not just Marcus Hale. He stepped forward, palms open. Vivian, he said quietly, listen to me. Her gun snapped up between them so fast he stopped mid-step. How did you get in here, she demanded. Answer me now. Marcus didn't flinch. His eyes were steady, almost resigned. Your front guard was unconscious when I got here. Her breath hitched. What? She whispered. I checked his pulse, Marcus said. He's alive, but someone else got in before me. They bypassed your exterior alarms. Vivian's mouth went dry. Why are you here? You should be asking who else is here, he said, voice low, and why they're targeting your son. Vivian's entire world constricted into a single point. Get out, she said, voice cracking like ice. Get out of my house right now. Marcus shook his head once, not with defiance, more like grief. I can't. Not while Owen is in danger. As if on cue, a soft crash sounded from upstairs. Vivian jerked toward the noise. Marcus's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. Stop, he said, eyes fierce. If you rush in blind, you'll die. Vivian ripped her arm away, breath shaking with fury. Don't touch me, that is my child upstairs. Exactly, he said, and that's why I'm here. Vivian stared at him. This man she barely knew, this father whose daughter she'd hired, this woodworker who was suddenly standing in her house, speaking like someone trained for far darker things. You knew something was coming, she said slowly, realization dawning. Didn't you? He didn't deny it. That's exactly why you're not going up there alone, he said. Another noise upstairs, a muffled thud. Vivian didn't wait. She bolted up the steps. Vivian! Marcus followed instantly. The hallway to Owen's room stretched long and too quiet. Vivian reached the door first, grabbing the handle. It wouldn't turn. Her breath seized. Owen, she shouted. Owen, answer me. Nothing. Her vision tunneled. Marcus stepped past her, examining the doorframe with rapid precision. His fingers brushed the hinges, the lock, the tiny seam at the bottom. This wasn't forced, he murmured. It was controlled. Someone locked it from the inside. You mean he's trapped? Vivian's voice rose in panic. Break it down, break it! Marcus put a hand flat against the wood. Owen, he said gently. It's Marcus, Emily's dad. Are you in there? A faint, shaky voice replied, muffled by the door. Marcus, someone's in my room. Vivian's knees nearly buckled. Marcus's eyes hardened. He stepped back, positioned his stance, and drove his boot into the door with a precise, powerful strike. The frame splintered. The lock cracked. The door flew inward. Vivian surged into the room first and stopped dead. Owen was pressed against the far wall, eyes huge with terror. And there, standing beside the half-open window, was a man dressed in black, his face uncovered, his expression cold and clinical. He held a thin metal device in one hand, something shaped like a needle but thicker, meant for injection, not harm. Vivian's heart nearly tore itself apart in her chest. Step away from him, she said, gun aimed squarely at the intruder. He tilted his head. You shouldn't have interrupted. Marcus moved before Vivian could blink, grabbing the intruder's wrist, wrenching it sideways with brutal efficiency. The device clattered to the floor. The intruder snarled and fought back, but Marcus's movements were too fast, too precise, too familiar. Vivian stared, feeling something ripple through her, recognition without explanation. This was not a hobbyist, not a handyman. This was a man who had lived a life she had not been told about. Marcus slammed the intruder into the wall, arm pinned across his throat. Who sent you? Marcus demanded, voice low and lethal. The intruder only smiled. You were supposed to be dead, he whispered. Vivian felt her blood run cold. The man suddenly jerked his knee upward, striking Marcus's ribs. Marcus hissed, grip faltering for a split second, enough for the intruder to twist free. He dove for the window. Vivian fired. Glass shattered. Rain burst inward, but the intruder was already gone, swallowed by the darkness outside. Vivian stood there, gun shaking faintly in her hands, chest heaving, unable to process the speed of what had just happened. Owen sobbed once, choked and trembling. Vivian ran to him, scooping him up, burying her face in his hair. I'm here, she whispered. I'm here. I've got you. Marcus stood by the window, chest rising and falling, scanning the street below for movement. His jaw clenched. His eyes narrowed. Vivian looked at him over Owen's shoulder. Really looked. Not at a stranger. Not at a woodworker. At a man who moved like a soldier. A man who was known by someone sent to hurt her child. A man who had broken into her house not to cause harm, but because he'd expected harm before she ever did. Owen clung to her neck. Marcus turned from the window, expression shadowed with something heavy and inevitable. "Vivian," he said quietly, "we need to talk now." And Vivian, heart pounding, realized she was more afraid of what he might say next than of the man who had just escaped into the night. Owen fell asleep an hour later in Vivian's bed, his small fist still clenched in her silk sheets, as if his body had forgotten how to let go even while his mind surrendered to exhaustion. Vivian sat beside him, one hand on his back, counting each slow breath. Marcus waited in the hallway. He didn't pace. He didn't speak. He simply leaned against the wall, arms folded loosely, the storm-lit shadows cutting sharp lines across his face. He looked like a statue carved for enduring things, pressure, darkness, secrets. When Vivian finally stepped out, pulling the door quietly shut, Marcus straightened. His eyes flicked instantly to the bruise forming along her forearm. "You're hurt," he said. She ignored that. "You broke into my home." His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "I told you, I found your guard unconscious outside. His pulse was thready. Whoever attacked him used a chokehold designed to drop someone without killing them. That was not me." "That doesn't explain how you got past my internal locks," she snapped. Marcus didn't answer for a beat. Not avoidance, hesitation. Finally, he said, "Your daughter works for me. That means your son's safety is part of her world, part of mine. I have protocols for emergencies." Vivian felt something cold slide under her ribs. "Protocols," she repeated quietly. "You mean training. Skills no woodworker should have." Marcus exhaled slowly, shoulders lowering a fraction. "Vivian—" "No," she said sharply. "No more half-truths. You fought like someone who has done it before. You assessed the scene like someone who knows how to read danger. And the intruder knew you. He knew your name wasn't Marcus Hale." Marcus's eyes darkened, not with anger. Something deeper. Something like regret that had been waiting years to be spoken. Vivian stepped closer, lowering her voice so Owen wouldn't hear if he stirred. "Who are you?" she whispered. Marcus held her gaze for a long moment, his silence stretching between them like a cracked wire humming with tension. "I can't tell you everything," he finally said. "Not yet." Vivian's pulse jumped. Fury and fear flooded her. "You expect me to let you stand in my home near my child without telling me who you really are?" "No," Marcus said softly. "I expect you to trust what you've seen, not the parts I've hidden, but the parts that showed themselves without my permission." Vivian opened her mouth to argue, but his next words cut clean through her. "When Owen screamed," Marcus said, voice rough, "I couldn't stay outside, not after what happened the first time." Vivian froze. "The first time what?" Marcus closed his eyes briefly, like the memory physically hurt to touch. "You don't want that answer yet," he murmured. Vivian stared at him, breath caught between anger and fear, and something else she couldn't name yet, an uneasy recognition of grief inside him that mirrored her own. She crossed her arms tightly. "Then tell me what that man came for." Marcus shook his head. "If I had the full answer, I wouldn't be standing here. But I know one thing for certain. It wasn't random, and it wasn't just about you." A shadow of dread slipped through her stomach. "He went into Owen's room," she whispered. "Why him?" Marcus stepped closer, the distance shrinking until she could feel the heat radiating from him. His voice dropped into something low and steady. "Because hurting you through him is the easiest way to break you. Whoever orchestrated this, they know your life, they know where your armor is weakest." His words flicked a switch inside her. All the courage she used to sit in boardrooms full of men twice her age meant nothing compared to the terror coiled around her heart now. Vivian swallowed hard. "What does Arcadia have to do with this?" Marcus's expression shifted, not shock but confirmation. "So they targeted the project," he said quietly. "Then it's escalating faster than I thought." Vivian grabbed his arm. "You knew something about Arcadia, didn't you?" Marcus didn't move away. "I knew it would draw attention, the wrong kind." Projects like Arcadia always do. She released him, her breath shaky. It's internal, she said. Someone is feeding information from inside my company. Someone who knew where we lived, who had access to Owen's daily routes. Marcus nodded grimly. That's why I came. Emily mentioned something yesterday that didn't sit right. A man watching her on the sidewalk. Same build as the guy tonight. Vivian's pulse hammered. Why didn't you tell me immediately? Marcus's eyes flickered with something like guilt. Because until tonight, I wasn't sure the threat was meant for you, or for me. Vivian stared. For you? She repeated. Why would anyone target you? Marcus hesitated. Thunder boomed outside. Vivian stepped back. You're lying by omission again. I'm protecting my daughter, Marcus said, voice low. And now, whether you like it or not, I'm protecting you. Vivian hated that the words didn't anger her as much as they should. Hated the tremor in her chest when he said you. Hated the part of her that believed him. I don't want your protection, she said, but it came out thin, not convincing. Marcus shook his head once, slowly. You don't have a choice anymore, and neither do I. Before Vivian could respond, Owen's door clicked softly. Owen stood in the hallway, sleep-mussed, clutching a stuffed toy by its arm. His eyes drifted to Marcus. Is the bad guy gone? He whispered. Marcus knelt instantly, like the world narrowed to that single tiny voice. Yes, he said gently. He's not coming back tonight. Owen's shoulders loosened. Fear melted a little. He stepped closer to Marcus without thinking. Vivian felt her throat tighten unexpectedly. How easily her son leaned into someone else's reassurance. Something he rarely did, even with her. It stung and soothed at the same time. Did I do okay? Owen asked, voice fragile. Marcus smiled softly. You were incredibly brave. Owen nodded, a shy flush creeping over his cheeks. Emily says you're good at fixing broken things, he whispered. Is that true? Vivian's gaze flicked to Marcus, searching. He looked at Owen, and something in his expression softened so deeply that it made Vivian's chest constrict. I try, he said quietly. Sometimes I don't get there in time, but I try. Owen leaned forward and hugged him. Just like that. Spontaneous, pure, instinctive. Marcus froze for half a heartbeat, like the gesture startled him. Then his hand gently cupped the back of Owen's small head. Vivian's breath shook. Her son had never given something so simple, so freely to any adult besides her. Not even to the teachers or therapists she paid a fortune for. His world had been small, guarded, lonely. And yet he hugged Marcus as if his body recognized something safe, something familiar. When Owen finally let go and padded back toward Vivian, she rested her hand on his shoulder, but her eyes never left Marcus. He stood slowly, rain-damp jacket clinging to his frame, eyes shadowed by more than the night. Vivian realized something then with razor clarity. Marcus Hale, whoever he truly was, had not entered their lives. He had collided with them. And collisions always left marks. She took a shaky breath. What happens now? She asked. Marcus held her gaze steady, unflinching. And now, he said, we find out who is hunting you before they stop aiming at your walls and start aiming at your heart. Vivian's pulse stumbled. He wasn't talking about Owen. Not entirely. But she didn't have the courage to ask what he meant. Not yet. The night after the intruder escaped felt like a different world entirely. Vivian barely slept. Every sound, every creak of wood, every gust of wind against the glass made her sit up straight, pulse racing. Dawn crept in slow and grey, sliding across the sheets like a thin layer of frost. Owen slept curled against her, his breathing soft and even. For hours she didn't move, afraid to disturb him, afraid to disturb the fragile peace that had settled over him after the nightmare he'd lived through. But she was even more afraid of what the next night might bring. By mid-morning, she'd already made her decision. She packed a discreet overnight bag for Owen, stuffed with his favorite blanket, 2 changes of clothes, and the wooden puzzle Emily's father had made. She slipped papers into a leather folio, security contacts, emergency protocols, and pulled on a blazer she rarely used outside boardrooms. When she came downstairs, Marcus was already in the kitchen. He stood by the island, sleeves rolled up, rewrapping the bandage on his forearm. Vivian paused on the last step. In the softer morning light, he looked older and younger at the same time, weathered by something she still didn't understand, grounded by something she envied. He looked up as if he felt her watching him. "You're taking Owen somewhere," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Vivian stepped off the last stair. A safe house. She didn't hide the bag in her hand. "He can't stay here." Marcus gave a slight nod. Approval, agreement, or resignation. She couldn't tell. "I'll take you both," he said. Vivian stiffened. "No, you're not coming." Marcus didn't argue in the way most men would. He didn't raise his voice or step closer. His gaze simply held hers, calm and unyielding. "It's not a request," he said. Vivian exhaled sharply. "This isn't your responsibility." Marcus's jaw tightened. "It became my responsibility the moment someone used your son as a weapon." Vivian's fingers curled around the handle of the bag. Something inside her, some instinct honed by years of boardroom battles, wanted to reject that statement outright. But another part of her, older and quieter and infinitely more honest, knew he was right. Before she could find her answer, the front door opened softly. Emily stepped inside, breath visible in the cold morning air, hair pulled into a loose braid. She clutched a thermos tight against her chest. Her eyes moved between them, instantly sensing the tension. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Vivian hesitated. "We're leaving the house for a few days. Owen's coming with me." Emily nodded slowly, her shoulders relaxing a fraction. "Good. I was worried you'd try to pretend everything was normal." Vivian blinked, surprised by the accuracy of that observation. Before she could respond, Emily turned toward her father. "You didn't sleep again." Marcus said nothing. Emily set the thermos on the counter and stepped closer, her voice lowered. "Dad, you can't keep doing this. You can't show up at crime scenes like you're still—" She caught herself, biting down on the rest. Vivian's heart lurched. "Still what? Still who?" Marcus's eyes flicked toward Vivian before settling back on Emily. "I'm fine." "No," she whispered fiercely, "you're not." Vivian looked away, suddenly feeling like an intruder in a moment that didn't belong to her. But Emily's next words pulled her straight back in. "You told me you left that life," Emily said, voice trembling just enough to betray fear. "You promised. You promised we would never go back to running from things in the dark." Vivian stared. "Running from things in the dark?" Marcus closed his eyes just for a moment. "I'm not going back," he murmured. "I'm just finishing what I should have finished a long time ago." Emily swallowed hard. "At what cost, Dad?" Vivian felt a strange ache in her chest. This wasn't the woodworker she'd imagined. This wasn't a simple man with a simple life. This was someone who lived with some kind of wound that hadn't closed in years. Emily turned toward Vivian. Please don't let him throw himself into danger again." Vivian flinched. "Emily, I didn't ask him to—" "You don't have to ask." Emily's voice cracked. "He'll do it anyway. He'll always choose saving people over saving himself." Vivian looked at Marcus, something shifting in her understanding of him. Like a curtain had been pulled back just enough to see the shape of a story she wasn't ready to hear yet. Owen came downstairs then, rubbing his eyes, dragging his stuffed toy behind him. "Are we going on a trip?" he asked sleepily. Vivian knelt and touched his cheek. "Yes, sweetheart, just for a little while." Owen nodded, trusting her completely. Marcus stepped closer, lowering himself to Owen's height. "Do you remember what we talked about last night?" he asked softly. Owen blinked, then nodded. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. "That's right." Marcus smiled, a small warm thing that softened him in ways Vivian didn't expect. "And you did everything right." Owen's face brightened, a tiny spark of pride flickering. Vivian felt that warmth again, the dangerous, growing warmth that made her chest feel tight. She stood, clearing her throat. "We leave in 10 minutes." Marcus nodded. "I'll drive." Vivian opened her mouth to argue, but Owen reached instinctively for Marcus's hand. That simple gesture silenced her. She looked at her son's small fingers wrapped around Marcus's, and her resistance crumbled in a way that scared her far more than any intruder had. "Fine," she said quietly. The safe house was nothing like Vivian expected. It wasn't some cold steel bunker owned by her security team. It was a modest brick building tucked behind an abandoned art gallery in the older part of the city. Quiet, unremarkable, almost invisible. Marcus led them to the back entrance, moving with a familiarity that made Vivian's suspicions spike again. "Who owns this place?" she asked. "Day friend," Marcus said. "What kind of friend?" He unlocked the door without turning. "The kind who doesn't put names on things." Vivian stopped walking. "Marcus." He finally looked at her. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. "You'll know everything," he said softly. "But not until I know you're safe." Vivian bristled. "I'm not a child." "No," he said, "but Owen is." That shut her up faster than anything else could. Emily moved past them, setting Owen's bag on a table. "I'll go put sheets on the bed." Vivian exhaled slowly, hands tightening at her sides. Marcus watched her for a long moment. "You're doing everything right," he said quietly. She laughed, but it sounded brittle. "You don't know that." "I do." His voice was steady, certain. "You fought for him last night without thinking. That's what a good parent does." Vivian's breath caught. Praise was not something she got often. Not genuine praise, anyway. She looked away. "You shouldn't have tried to fight that intruder alone." "I didn't," Marcus said. "I fought him because you needed time to get to your son." Vivian's throat tightened. "Why do you care so much?" Marcus stepped closer, but not too close, just enough that she felt the weight of his presence. "Because I know what it looks like," he murmured, "when a parent loses a child." Vivian froze. The room felt suddenly smaller. Marcus's eyes were not fierce now, they were haunted. "I know what it does to a person," he said, "how it rewires every part of them." Vivian swallowed, her voice barely a whisper. "Your wife, Emily's mother." Marcus's jaw tightened. "That's a story for another time." She didn't push. She felt instinctively that if she did, something fragile inside him might break. A soft thud sounded upstairs, Emily laying out the bedding. Owen sat quietly at the table, playing with the wooden puzzle. Marcus's shoulders eased slightly at the sight. Vivian watched him watching her son. She watched something soften in him, something he didn't seem to know how to hide. And for the first time, she felt the edges of a different kind of fear. He wasn't just protecting Owen. He was beginning to care about him. And that meant he was beginning to care about her, too. She looked away quickly, heart pounding. Because she felt it too. Something she wasn't ready for. Something she didn't dare name. Not with threats creeping closer. Not with secrets still in the dark. The safe house should have felt like a sanctuary. Instead, it felt like a waiting room before disaster. By early afternoon, the sky had darkened again, a dense curtain of clouds gathering as if the city itself was holding its breath. Inside, Vivian tried to settle her nerves with small structured tasks, organizing some files, rechecking messages, adjusting her security protocols, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. She hated that. She hated that she couldn't hide it from Marcus. Marcus moved around the safe house with slow, deliberate purpose. He checked the windows, tested the locks, walked the perimeter twice. He wasn't restless, he was calculating. Every movement told Vivian that this wasn't the first time he'd used a safe house like this. She didn't ask, not yet. Upstairs, Emily quietly made the bed in the tiny guest room, humming under her breath. Owen sat at the small kitchen table, painstakingly assembling the wooden train Marcus had carved. Each piece clicked into place with soft certainty. Vivian watched Marcus watching Owen. That look again. Something warm and painful like recognition. Vivian stepped closer, unable to ignore the question that had been clawing at her since last night. "I knew someone was coming," she said softly so Owen wouldn't hear. "Before they entered the house, before the alarms, you sensed it." Marcus kept his eyes on Owen's small, determined hands. "You learn to hear patterns," he said. "Silence has its own sound." "That's not something a woodworker says," Vivian murmured. He finally looked at her, not with defiance, with exhaustion, and truth he wasn't ready to speak. "Vivian," he said quietly, "if I tell you everything now before I have the evidence to make you believe it, you'll think I'm the threat." Her breath stalled. "Am I wrong?" he asked. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The tension broke an hour later, not with gunfire, not with an intruder breaking through a window, but with the soft chime of Vivian's phone. A message from an unknown number. Vivian's stomach clenched as she opened it. "Stop digging, stop hiding, or Owen will never see his 7th birthday." Her vision blurred. Marcus was beside her in seconds, reading the message without asking permission. He didn't curse. He didn't panic. He just went very, very still. Emily came down the stairs then, carrying a folded blanket. She froze when she saw their faces. "What happened?" she whispered. Vivian turned the screen toward her. Emily inhaled sharply, covering her mouth with her hand. Marcus took the phone from Vivian gently, as if it were a fragile thing about to shatter. His voice dropped into something too calm. "They're escalating," he said. "This wasn't meant to scare you." "What was it meant to do?" Vivian whispered. Marcus handed the phone back. "It's meant to remind you that they're close." Vivian's knees weakened. She gripped the table behind her to stay upright. Owen looked up from the puzzle, sensing the shift in the air. "Mom," he said quietly. Vivian forced a smile that felt like glass cracking. "I'm okay, sweetheart, just work things." Marcus's eyes flicked to her, reading the lie. Emily moved to the kitchen sink, gripping the counter. She stared at the running water for a long moment before asking, "Dad, what do they want with Owen?" Marcus didn't answer right away. His silence pressed into the room like weight. Vivian's throat tightened. "Tell us," she said. "Tell me everything." Marcus exhaled, slow and heavy. "They want leverage," he said. "Someone inside your company wants Arcadia, and they know the fastest way to break the strongest person in the room is through the smallest." Vivian's chest constricted. Her vision dimmed at the edges. Emily turned to her father. Fear sharpened her features. Is this like before?" Vivian's eyes snapped to Marcus. "Before?" Marcus's jaw flexed. He shook his head once. "No." But Emily didn't believe it. Not fully. Vivian saw that. Vivian swallowed hard. "What happened before?" Marcus's expression shifted, barely, but the grief beneath it was unmistakable. "It's not for today," he said quietly. Vivian's anger sparked instantly. "Someone threatened to kill my child, Marcus. You owe me the truth." Marcus met her gaze, steady, grounded, unbearably gentle. "I owe you safety first," he said. "Truth comes after you survive it." Vivian felt her resolve waver in the face of that calm certainty. Something inside her softened, unwillingly, dangerously. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Vivian," he said, "if I give you the pieces of a story before you're ready, you'll misinterpret them, and you'll run straight into the line of fire." Vivian's breath trembled. "And what if I don't want to depend on someone I barely know?" Marcus's eyes flicked to Owen, then back to her. "Then depend on me for him," he said softly, "not for you." The room fell silent. Vivian felt her heart stutter, not from fear this time, but from something much harder to name, something she had no space for, no time for, and yet it rose anyway. Trust, or the beginning of it. And she hated it. She needed it. She feared it. All at once. The doorbell shattered the quiet. 3 sharp chimes. Everyone froze. Owen's head snapped up. Emily's breath hitched. Vivian felt ice grip her spine. Marcus moved first, gestures precise and deadly quiet. He lifted a finger, "Stay still," then stepped toward the door, every movement controlled. Vivian followed him, pulse pounding, unable to stop herself. Marcus pressed his back to the wall beside the door. He glanced at Vivian. "Who knows this address?" he whispered. "No one," she breathed. "No one except—" Marcus opened the peephole carefully. He stared for a long moment. His shoulders dropped, but not in relief, in grief. Vivian felt tension twist her stomach. "Who is it?" Marcus didn't look at her as he answered. "My past," he whispered, "and your future problem." Before Vivian could process the meaning, he unlocked the door. Standing on the threshold, drenched in rain, wearing an expression that promised trouble, was a woman in a dark coat, badge glinting, hair pulled into a tight bun. Her eyes met Vivian's instantly. "Miss Drake," she said, voice crisp, "we need to talk." "Now." Marcus closed his eyes briefly, bracing. Because this woman knew him. Because Vivian instantly sensed she wasn't an ally. Because Owen's safety just became infinitely more complicated. And because truth, real dangerous truth, was finally stepping into the room. The woman at the door stepped inside as if the threshold belonged to her, not to Vivian, not to anyone. Rain slid off her coat in thin rivulets, her dark boots leaving sharp prints on the wooden floor. Her presence shifted the whole room. Even the air felt tighter. Vivian stood straighter without thinking, instinctively shifting so Owen, still watching from the hallway, remained behind her. Her chest tightened when the woman's eyes flicked briefly to him. "Don't," Vivian said quietly. "Don't look at my son." The woman's gaze returned to her with cool precision. "Noted." Marcus closed the door behind her. The sound was final, like a lock snapping into place. "Agent Ramirez," he said. Vivian felt something cold slide through her. "An agent." "Special agent," the woman corrected, brushing rain from her shoulders. "But you always had trouble with titles." There was a familiarity in her tone, gritted, heavy with history. Vivian felt her pulse quicken. Emily stepped halfway down the stairs, pale. "Agent Ramirez?" The woman's expression softened just enough to acknowledge Emily. "You look taller," she said, "and older." Emily swallowed. "I was 14 last time we saw you." Vivian's breath caught. 14? Marcus stared at Ramirez with a look that wasn't anger, wasn't fear, just exhaustion. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Ramirez turned her attention back to him, ignoring Vivian for the moment. "I'm here because your little disappearing act finally caught up with you." Emily stiffened. "Dad didn't disappear. He left for our safety." Ramirez sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Emily, sweetheart, I know the story he told you, but you didn't see what we found after he walked away." Marcus clenched his jaw. "Enough." Vivian stepped forward slightly, her voice steady but sharp. "Someone tell me what's going on." Ramirez looked at her with new interest, the kind she reserved for people she couldn't yet classify as ally or threat. "Señor Vivian Drake," she said, "CEO, visionary. The woman currently sitting on top of a project that 3 different intelligence groups want to steal." Vivian felt the words hit her like a blow. "Arcadia?" Ramirez nodded. "Yes, and the breach wasn't amateur work. The man who broke into your house last night, former contractor for a covert tech acquisition unit. That unit was dissolved, abruptly, after its lead strategist went off the grid." Vivian's pulse stumbled. "You're saying that man was connected to Arcadia theft?" Ramirez's eyes sharpened. "I'm saying he was connected to Marcus." Silence slammed into the room. Vivian turned to Marcus slowly, her voice barely audible. "Is that true?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. His shoulders seemed to curve inward just slightly, as if the truth he'd avoided was finally crashing down on him. "He wasn't after you," Ramirez said softly. "Not originally." Vivian's heart pounded. "Then who?" "Marcus," Ramirez said. "They wanted Marcus, and when they realized he was near you, they used your son to pull him out." Vivian's breath shattered. "No," she whispered. "No, they went into Owen's room because of Arcadia." Ramirez shook her head once. "Arcadia was leverage, Marcus was the target." Vivian felt something inside her crack, something cold, fragile, important. She stepped back as if struck. All of this danger around my son." She stared at Marcus, disbelief and betrayal twisting her voice. "It followed you." Marcus's eyes met hers, weighted with regret. "Yes," he said quietly, "but it's not what you think." Vivian shook her head, breath unsteady. "My house, my security, my child—" "Vivian," Marcus said, stepping toward her. She flinched away. It was the first time she had ever flinched. Marcus froze mid-step. Pain flickered in his expression. Ramirez looked between them with a weary exhale. "I told you, Marcus, you can't outrun something built on classified blood." Emily came down the stairs fully now, chin trembling. "Dad, what does she mean? What classified blood?" Marcus stared at his daughter, then at Vivian, then back at Emily. His voice dropped to a whisper, so raw that it made Vivian's throat burn. "Emily, I'm sorry." Vivian felt that apology pierce the room like a blade, because she knew instinctively it wasn't for what he'd done wrong. It was for what he was about to reveal. Ramirez stepped closer, folding her arms. "You want to know who he really is?" she asked. "Fine, let's start with his real name." Marcus cut her off sharply. "Don't!" Ramirez raised a brow. "You don't get to control this anymore. The moment that intruder stepped into a child's room, this stopped being your private punishment." Vivian's heart hammered against her ribs. "Punishment?" Emily grabbed her father's sleeve. "Dad, please tell us. Tell me the truth." Marcus swayed slightly, as if his entire body were caught between collapsing under the weight of the moment and standing tall for the people he loved most. He closed his eyes, then opened them with a calm that felt like the quiet before tragedy. "My name," he said softly, "is Nathan Rhodes." Vivian went completely still. The name rang in her memory. The arcane intelligence reports, the sealed documents, the missing operative tied to a classified AI operation years ago. The ghost whose file was redacted in more lines than it kept. Ramirez nodded. Former intelligence strategist, the best of his generation, until the incident. Emily's face drained of color. What incident? Marcus's jaw clenched, but Ramirez spoke first. The explosion, she said, involving a tech prototype and a compromised agent, the one that killed your mother. Emily's breath broke. She stumbled back, hand over her mouth. Vivian felt her stomach hollow out. Marcus didn't move. Ramirez's voice softened, but stayed clinical. He lied to protect you. He took you and vanished because the people responsible started hunting him after he refused to cover up the truth. Vivian stared at Marcus. Her voice was barely a whisper. You're the reason these people want Arcadia. Marcus finally met her gaze, and there was nothing defensive in his eyes. Only devastation. They want Arcadia because it's connected to the same tech your mother died trying to expose, he told Emily. And because I'm the only one who knows how dangerous it still is. Vivian swallowed hard, her vision blurring with anger and grief and something dangerously close to empathy. So you hid, she said, voice trembling. You became someone else. You tried to build a small life, and now all of it is collapsing into mine. Marcus didn't deny it. Vivian, he said, voice breaking in a way she'd never heard. I never meant for any of this to reach you. I swear on my life, I would burn the world before letting anything hurt Owen. Vivian's breath hitched. Because she believed him. Because she didn't want to believe him. Because something inside her, something bruised and tired and lonely, had already begun to trust him before she realized she shouldn't. Agent Ramirez stepped forward, lowering her voice. You need to decide something, Miss Drake. She glanced at Marcus, then back. Whether to trust him or to turn him in. Owen peeked around the doorway right then, sleepy-eyed, holding the half-built wooden train. Mom, he whispered, are we safe? Vivian looked at him, then at Marcus, Nathan Rhodes, the man who had saved her son, the man who had brought danger to her door, the man whose past was now tangled with her future. She inhaled shakily. Her answer stuck in her throat, but the decision forming behind it was dangerous enough to rewrite everything. For a long moment, the safe house held its breath. Agent Ramirez waited. Emily trembled beside the kitchen table. Marcus, Nathan, stood motionless, bracing himself for the blow. And Owen stared up at his mother with wide, frightened eyes. Vivian knelt and pulled Owen close. She stroked his hair, steadying her voice. We're safe, she whispered. She had no idea if that was true. When she rose, her gaze fixed on Marcus, the man who wasn't Marcus at all. Her voice was soft but sharp enough to cut the air clean in half. You lied to me. Marcus didn't flinch. I did. You brought danger to my home. Yes. You put my son in the center of a war he had nothing to do with. He exhaled, the sound barely audible. I know. Vivian stepped closer, until the space between them was painfully thin. But you also saved him, she said. You saved us both, twice. Marcus looked up, and for the first time she saw fear, not for himself, but for what she might say next. Vivian turned to Agent Ramirez, shoulders squared. He stays, she said. Ramirez blinked. Ms. Drake? I said he stays. Vivian's tone left no room for negotiation. You can arrest him later. You can interrogate him, expose him, drag him through every political pit the agency owns, later. Right now, he is the only person who can keep Owen alive. Ramirez studied her for a moment, lips pressed into a thin line, then she nodded. As long as you understand what you're risking. Vivian's eyes softened, barely, as she looked at Marcus. I do. Emily let out a shaky sob of relief. Marcus closed his eyes, as if the weight in his chest finally shifted. But the relief lasted exactly 3 seconds, because the safe house lights flickered. Once, twice, went out. All at once, Marcus straightened, instinct snapping into place. Everyone down, he barked. Vivian grabbed Owen, shielding him. Emily pulled close against the wall. Ramirez reached inside her coat for her weapon. Then a sharp click echoed outside the door. A magnetic latch release. Marcus lifted his hand in a silent command. Wait. But whoever was outside had no intention of waiting. The door exploded inward. A concussive blast of splintered wood and light tore the hinges free. Vivian felt the shockwave hit her chest like a physical force. Owen cried out. Emily screamed. Ramirez dove sideways, gun raised. 3 masked figures stormed the room. Marcus moved before any of them reached the threshold. He grabbed the first assailant by the vest, slammed him into the doorframe, yanked the gun from his hands and tossed it across the room. The second swung a baton. Marcus ducked, drove his elbow into the man's ribs, and swept his leg. The third aimed for Vivian. He got within 6 feet of her. Marcus crossed that distance in 2. The impact sounded like bone and fury breaking at the same time. Marcus pinned the man to the floor, twisting his wrist until the weapon clattered loose. Ramirez fired once, clean, precise, dropping the second assailant before he could draw another weapon. Vivian clutched Owen, heart coming apart inside her chest. Emily ran toward her father, panicking. "Dad! Dad!" Marcus didn't look up. His voice was steady, lethal. "Emily, stay back." The last conscious attacker spat blood onto the floor, staring up at Marcus with a crooked grin. "You can't win, Rhodes," he hissed. "They already know Arcadia isn't yours to protect." Marcus leaned closer, voice low and sharp as a blade. "Then they'll come through me first." Vivian felt that line like a physical blow. The man laughed, a broken, sick sound. "They already did." He jerked his chin slightly. Marcus froze. Vivian followed the motion to a small device strapped under the man's vest. A blinking red light. Ramirez paled. "It's a beacon. They marked the location. Reinforcements are coming." Vivian's pulse spiked. "How fast?" "Minutes," Ramirez said. Marcus sprang up, moving toward the back exit. "We have to leave, now." Vivian grabbed Owen's hand, trembling. Emily clutched her father's sleeve. Ramirez covered their exit, dragging one assailant behind her to block the doorway. They burst out into the alley behind the safe house, rain hitting them in icy bursts. The city stretched out in narrow corridors of brick and shadow. Vivian spun toward Marcus. "Where do we go?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "To the one place they won't expect." Vivian looked at him, breath shaking. "And where's that?" He met her gaze, rain sliding down his face. "Your company headquarters." Ramirez's eyes widened. "The Arcadia lab." Marcus nodded. "They want Arcadia. Then we make it the trap." Vivian stared at him. He wasn't just protecting her. He wasn't just fighting for Emily. He was choosing to stand with her against the same world that had shattered his life once before. She didn't understand why. She didn't understand how. She only knew she believed him. Finally, Thes Kulkesa, the final confrontation. The lab was sealed by biometric locks, retina, pulse, voice code. Only 3 people in the world had full access. Vivian, Herco, Sarah, and 1 engineer currently on medical leave. Marcus approached the steel door, breathing hard, analyzing the infrastructure. "They'll come through the east stairwell," he murmured. "Ramirez, take position above. Emily, stay behind the containment console. Vivian." She stepped beside him. "I'm not hiding," she said. "Not tonight." Marcus looked at her, truly looked at her, and something in his expression cracked open. A tenderness she wasn't ready for, a fear he couldn't hide. "You should," he whispered. Vivian lifted her chin. "I trust you." Those words hit him harder than any strike he had taken tonight. Before he could respond, the stairwell door slammed open. Gunfire, shouts, boots pounding concrete. Marcus pushed Vivian behind a steel column, deflecting the first attacker with a brutal strike. Ramirez fired from above, taking down another. A masked figure lunged toward the containment console where Emily crouched. Vivian saw it. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed a metal stool and slammed it into the attacker's back with a force that surprised even herself. The man stumbled. Marcus was there instantly, finishing what she started. Owen hid behind the console, hands over his ears, trying not to cry. When the last attacker hit the floor, Ramirez swept the area. Clear. Silence fell heavy and trembling. Vivian rushed to Owen, pulling him into her arms. He sobbed into her neck, tiny fingers clutching her blouse. She held him as if her whole body existed only for this moment. Marcus sank to one knee beside them, exhaustion pulling at him. Vivian met his eyes. "Is it over?" she whispered. Marcus shook his head slowly. "Not yet." He reached toward the Arcadia terminal, a sleek glass interface glowing faintly blue. Vivian's breath hitched. "What are you doing?" Marcus pressed his palm to the console, a hidden menu lit beneath his hand. Ramirez looked shocked. "How do you know that access point? It's classified." Marcus didn't look at her. "Because I helped design the prototype 10 years ago." Vivian felt her entire world tilt. "You... what?" Marcus's voice was barely audible. "The original Arcadia wasn't built to change the world. It was built to control information, to control people. Your version is the evolution, and they want it because they think it will finish what the first one couldn't." Vivian stared at him, unable to breathe. "You never left this world," she whispered. Marcus shook his head. "I tried," he said, "but it never left me." He toggled the system, isolating the encrypted fragments taken from her home. "You want to end this?" he asked. Vivian nodded, trembling. "Then we expose the truth, not by hiding." He looked at her with something fierce and fragile. "But by shining light directly into the place that's been hiding in the dark." Vivian stepped beside him. Their hands hovered over the final command. Marcus whispered, "Together." Vivian pressed the key. The system erupted with encrypted logs, documents, audio files, classified dossiers, wiped archives. Everything the attackers had killed for. Everything Marcus had disappeared to escape. Ramirez inhaled sharply. This will burn half the underground operations in the city." Vivian didn't take her eyes off Marcus. "Good," she said softly. He held her gaze like a man finally seeing sunlight after years underground. Alarms began to sound, security forces, police, federal agents arriving in waves. Ramirez moved to intercept them. Emily sank to the floor crying from fear and relief. Owen crawled into Marcus's arms without asking permission. Vivian felt her heart ache at the sight. Marcus held the boy gently, carefully, as if Owen were something breakable and precious. Vivian's voice trembled. "Nathan!" He looked up, and she saw it then, the truth he had tried so hard to keep buried. He wasn't dangerous to her. He wasn't a threat to Owen. He was just a man who had spent his life trying to save people, and failing at the moments that mattered most. "Stay with us," she whispered. He blinked, startled. "Vivian!" "Stay," she repeated, voice shaking. "Not because you're protecting us, but because Owen wants you here." Marcus's breath caught. He looked down at the boy in his arms. Owen nodded sleepily. "Don't go." Emily came closer, laying a hand on her father's shoulder. "Please, Dad," she whispered, "let this be home." For the first time since she'd met him, since he'd stepped into her world like a storm, Marcus's face broke. Not into pain, not into fear, into hope. Slow, fragile, new. Vivian reached out, her hand brushing the back of his. He didn't pull away. He held on. Finally. Thes Kulkesa. The final ending moment. Days passed. The city settled. The attackers were arrested. Arcadia was secured under new oversight. Agent Ramirez filed a sealed report that protected both Vivian's company and Marcus's identity. And one quiet evening, when the danger was no longer at their doorstep, Vivian watched Owen and Emily build the wooden train on her living room floor. Marcus sat beside her on the sofa, not touching her, not speaking, just existing in a space where he had once been a stranger, now something else entirely. Vivian exhaled slowly. "You know," she murmured. "I never asked why you carve children's toys." Marcus looked at her, a faint smile touching his lips. "Because they're the only things that don't need to be perfect to be loved." Vivian's breath caught. She turned toward him, their shoulders brushing lightly. "Marcus," she said softly, "we don't have to be perfect either." He met her eyes, not with the fear of a man who had lost everything, with the courage of a man finally willing to stay. Slowly, gently, he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Their fingers intertwined, quietly, naturally, as if they'd been reaching for one another long before either realized it. Owen laughed from the floor. Emily leaned back against the couch, smiling at them both. And for the first time in years, Vivian felt her world settle. Not into silence, not into power, into home.